So, Richie, it's a real pleasure to have you on the show. It's been such a long time since I had a conversation with you from back in the days when I was back in Birmingham Virgin Active. But if there's something I think that sums up, and I just said this off air, that sums up your career, it's like courage and bravery and jumping at opportunities head first and sort of working out how to make them work later down the line. Before we unpack that a little bit, and before we give anyone who doesn't know who you are an introduction, like, would you say that you're a brave and courageous man? Or have you just sort of like found your way and stumbled through opportunities as they come?
I think I'd like to think of myself as that. Yeah, you know, like, I mean, I've always looked at I've got sort of parents that had me later in their life. So like they were very much war babies. So they have that kind of remnants of that World War II mentality, right? So, and you know, that kind of, that courage, I suppose. So yeah, it's something that I would like to see myself as. And I don't like to sit here and go, yeah, I'm so brave. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, I think the courage is an interesting word though, because it can be misconstrued for absence of fear. But I don't have absence of fear. It's overcoming that fear, you know, which is what sort of does it. There's been lots of things that I haven't wanted to do, but you just do it. Do you know what I mean? You get over yourself and get on with it. But no, I like that. You could keep talking, Si.
So, like, as I was saying, you had like parents that had you later on in their life. I mean, are you an only child? Do you have siblings?
No, I've got siblings. Yeah, they're all a lot older than me.
Do you think that's helped you along the way because you've seen people that have gone through things, taken risks, and come out the other side better off? Because I'm an only child, so I don't know what that's like.
I wouldn't particularly say that. No, like weirdly, and I mean, I can't say whether I have or not, but once I make a decision, I'm going to do something, I'm all in. That's just how I am. I'm all in, like, that's it, we're doing it, right? So I see it as a blessing and a curse because, you know, like, I mean, I could be sat in a burning house, but I'll be so focused on a task that the world could be burning and I won't notice it. Do you know what I mean? But equally, you know, it also helps sometimes. So yeah, I don't know, I've talked myself out here. I've lost track of my thoughts, but yeah.
You talk about siblings and like the only child.
Yeah, no, I would not say siblings. I don't know what it is. I don't know. I just, because other people do say it, they're like, wow, you really do. When you do something, you really do it. And I do. Like, I won't sort of, there'll be jobs around the house. You know, that old thing where it's like, I've told my missus I'm going to do it. She doesn't have to remind me every 6 months, right? Because there are things that I'm like, I'm not ready for that yet, because I know when I do it, I'm going to get really into it. I'll probably draw diagrams and it's going to get done properly. And I don't have the headspace or the time for that right now.
Yeah. So, I totally get what you mean. I'm very similar to the point of probably extremes in the sense of I was recently diagnosed with ADHD, and characteristics of ADHD are someone who can't focus on a task massively, even if they know what they're doing, to the point of hyper focus at other times. So there's been times where I've got into something and it's 2 a.m. I've not looked up from my laptop and I'm like, I've probably got 4 hours of sleep. I need to shut myself away from this. So I totally get that.
It's funny you bring that up, because ADHD has been, when you start hearing about something more and more, and I seem to be hearing about it more and more. And actually, I think it was on TikTok, and there's somebody, the woman who has been diagnosed with ADHD, and she talks about some of the symptoms and stuff. And I wonder whether I might have a touch of that, because some of the traits she talks about, I'm like, that sounds a lot like me, you know? Like, I think people see, they've like, it's almost like it's seen as an illness, or it's not. I think it's just a certain way of being wired up.
Yeah.
You know,
that's how I look at it. I look at it like it means I have struggles in the way my brain tends to think of stuff. It means that I have to have much more systems in place to get things done and not forget things. But on the flip side of that, it makes me creative. It makes me find solutions for stuff. It makes me jump into those opportunities like you have many times in your career. So you say it's not a blessing or a curse. It's just like, in the words of Liam Neeson, a particular set of skills.
Yeah, exactly.
So before we delve into your career, like for people, I presume most people who are of my age or older in Britain will know who you are. But for people that maybe don't, maybe the people outside of Hong Kong, tell us who Rich Neville is.
As far as career goes, I was in the hit band Five. We went from 1997 to 2001. We had 4 #1 albums. We sold 20 million records. We were platinum in the United States. We toured the world. And yeah, that kind of about sums up. Yeah, Brit Awards, MTV Europe Music Awards. We collaborated with Queen on We Will Rock You. Interesting fact on that, actually, that not a lot of people know, is that Brian May wrote that song. And the day we went #1, we played Hyde Park in London with Queen. And we came off, and he cracked this bottle of champagne, and he went, I always knew it was a #1. And I said, what do you mean? Wasn't it #1 when you guys released it? He went, no, it only went to #2. He said, but I always knew it was a #1. So he was dead chuffed that it had finally made it to #1.
What is that like, collaborating with someone like the mega powers of Queen, especially for someone like yourself, who I know was a rock fan at heart before going into the boy band stuff? It's probably something you never even thought was possible when you started a pop band.
Yeah, it was it was all a bit surreal, really. It was like, hey, God, somebody, management, whatever, came and they were like, we've been in touch with Queen, and we're thinking about doing this thing, and we're like, what? Yeah, okay, fine, let's do it then. Like, cool. And then, of course, like Simon Cowell's like, and Rich, you're going to sing lead on this, and that, I must admit, was like, oh, okay. When you think Freddie Mercury, I mean, that's some big shoes to fill, and
is it scary or exciting, or a bit of both?
The initial response was fear. The initial response was like, oh, everyone's going to compare me to him when they listen to it, and they're instantly going to hate it because people like what they're used to. So that was my initial response, and then it was just like, well, you haven't really got a choice. You're doing this, so you might as well just go, straight in and sing it to the best of your ability and go and do it, And yeah, it was an amazing experience. I mean, my truly, I've told, I have mentioned this before, but my favorite memory in the music industry was we were round at Roger Taylor's house doing a rehearsal for We Will Rock You, and we called a break, and my band went off to grab a cup of tea, have a walk, whatever, and I was still in there. The mic was up. Brian sort of still had the guitar, and he wandered over to Roger at the stool behind the drums, and they were having a quiet little conversation. And I just sang the opening line to Jimi Hendrix' Hey Joe down the mic. And Brian May sort of just going, now. Roger Taylor's picks up the sticks, and we've just jammed Hey Joe off the cuff without, just because. And it was what was cool. It was, Rich from Five and Queen, but it was also just 3 fans of Jimi Hendrix, just having a laugh. And
I suppose does it bring you, like, I don't want to sound like a level playing field, because like both bands are megastars in their own way, but for someone obviously grew up probably idolizing Queen in a lot of ways, to go in there probably with a bit of imposter syndrome and feeling like, whoa, these guys are big. Do you all come back down to, we're just fans of Jimi Hendrix? Puts you all on that sort of level playing field, and just, people collaborating.
It was that, and it was also like, oh my God, I'm jamming with Brian and Roger Taylor. Just for the fun of it. We're all just genuinely enjoying playing this tune, Special moment I'll never forget. Like you say, I grew up in a pub. My parents owned a pub. So the jukebox was constantly playing Queen and, Bohemian Rhapsody and that iconic bit in Wayne's World in the car. So, yeah, they're part of world history, and like those iconic riffs and this, they such a unique sound. No one's ever sounded like them. They had a certain way about them, the way they laid their vocals and harmonies and stuff. And obviously such a charismatic frontman and stuff. So, yeah. It was, the whole thing was surreal. Even when we opened the Brits, And that's even in itself, because I'm only, 19, and, it's literally like 2 years before I'm in school, and then it's like you're opening the Brits, probably going to win an award because you don't know if you're going to win, but we knew we were in with a chance, which we did win Best Pop that night. And you stood like, in the rigging, like, and Roger's like, rock on, Richie. And I'm like, yeah, rock on, Brian. And then you still stop on the edge. You're like, what? Like
a super surreal moment. Like, I almost credit my sort of love of like pop music for a lot of what my music taste developed into. Like, I remember as a kid, I was like, I loved Simply Red, I loved All Saints, and I love Five. And I'm not just saying that to float your ego. Generally, me and my mum were huge fans of yours, like growing up. And I look back at that, and I remember Under the Bridge by All Saints. I remember We Will Rock You by you guys. And I just thought, like, I look back at where my music taste went. It was like almost I was introduced to the era before my time, which became really my taste in music through the music of today, which is I can imagine it's what people listening to that Elton John sort of medley that's just come out now are probably starting to think. They'll probably go back and listen like, what is this? And then there's a whole new generation opened up to incredible music.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I always say that I'm giving my daughter a music education. Like I'll be in the car and I'll be thinking, I've never played you Fleetwood Mac. This now. These are famous for this, and like 60s bands. I think the 60s, certainly the late 50s and 60s really shaped pop music. Music wouldn't be what it is today, even down to like, the 60s and 70s, I suppose, then turned into hip hop, and then, do you know what I mean? And all of that. So, I think it's important if you're a music fan to know at least a bit of musical history, like rock music. People go, huh? If you look at the chord structures, rock music is essentially the blues music, and it all just gifts each other, and that's cool little mixing pot, isn't it? And now it's like kind of anything goes, just try anything.
Yeah, but you're in a weird era of music, right? Because it's like I wonder what it would have been like you guys in your heyday now, where you don't really have that number one, you don't have the album selling. It's literally like, if I want to listen to something brand new, I can do it exactly the same time as listen to Fleetwood Mac. There's no real sense of time anymore. Like, I couldn't tell you what just came out because it's just readily available, which is good. I suppose it's a positive and a negative for people who are new coming up in the industry, but potentially good for people that have, 20, 30, 40, 50 years in the past still to be able to make money and make a revenue from it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you've obviously got the whole streaming platforms and stuff like that, because like, absolutely, what people don't realize is the time and effort. Like, all right, here's a question. A track, right? A track that gets written and then goes to ends up being releasable, mastered and releasable. Not only can that cost a lot of money if you want a good engineers and good this and good that, good studio, good mic, all of it. But how long do you think that one song takes?
I can imagine considerably longer than what I would actually initially think.
People would probably think, 2 days, maybe.
I'm going 3 months.
Well, maybe not quite that long.
Okay.
But certainly, if you put all your effort into it, because it's the OCD, it's the ADHD. Once I can the snare, and then you go away, and then you come back and you're like, it's not quite right. I need to do something else to it, and it can take. I'd say probably an average is between 2 and 6 weeks. It depends on the producers and stuff like that. So it takes a long time. There's a lot of effort goes into it, a lot of time, and I don't think people that don't work in music realize it's quite throwaway, So then when the streaming platforms came along and they take most of the profit, it's a bit of a sickener. It's like, well, even though you kind of need them now, I think that the balance should certainly be reset a little bit.
Yeah. Have you got an idea of how that happens? Is there a way for that to be reset, do you think?
The thing is, it was because of illegal downloads. I don't think if Spotify had come along and illegal downloading hadn't happened, the labels would have probably been like, well, no. Like, and they probably would have set something up like that themselves. But they were so desperate at all the revenue being lost, they were on the back foot, that they kind of went, well, this is kind of a way we can stop the rot. I think I'm guessing that's what they did, you know. So yeah, that enabled it to happen. It's just, you know, an interesting thing. But again, I've got this theory, you know, that in the 20th century up to about the year 2000, music was king. Music was king. Music was going to change the world. Everything, you know, from like the 60s, then you had like 90s, you had Britpop and you had rave, and then hip hop and R&B. It was all such a big news. And then in 2000, music went down that ladder a little bit and technology became king. And it changed the world a little bit. And look, you can sit and moan about it as a musician, but you know, you just have to accept it is what it is. You know, time moves on, things change, and that's that. It doesn't, you know, people still love music. It's just changed. It's different.
I wonder what the impact that will have on generations, because is this still a way where people express themselves vicariously through the music that's produced by others? And if that music slips down the totem pole, do people lose that level of identity they maybe once had?
Another on kind of what you're saying as well is that you used to buy an album, and an album was a musical journey, and every single song didn't have to be a hit. You know, some people might love track 8, some people might not like it that much, but everyone kind of liked the singles. But that's the whole point. It was a musical offering with a few singles on it to sort of sell the album, or usually, unless you're Pink Floyd. You know, but I think that it certainly affected that, because everyone it's very track driven now. So maybe to an extent, a little bit of that artistry, it's not been lost. It's just being ignored a little more, and people aren't doing that because they know that it's track based, and you can see do you know what I mean? So
you go for the ones you like, and you don't listen to the ones you
don't listen to the rest of it. Yeah, and you stick it in a playlist. So which makes it a little more formulaic and less experimental.
Yeah. So going into a little bit about how this all sort of came about for you, and almost talking about that first sort of like big brave move was, like, tell us a little bit about how Five came about. So you had an ad that was in The Stage, am I right, when you moved to London?
They may have taken an ad out in The Stage. That's not how I saw. That's how I found out about it. I was doing a school play, and I was getting in late. And when you've performed anything, well, certainly me, I've got adrenaline for hours afterwards. I cannot sleep. I'm high as a kite. So I was 16, 17, and I took the newspaper up. I thought, I'll flick through the newspaper in bed, like, and just, you know, try and calm down. And it was, pretty sure it was page 7. I don't know why. There was an article that said, because this is an important piece of information in this story, Spice Girls were at their peak at this point. Right? Are
you disappointed it wasn't called the Spice Boys? Because I heard that was how it was written.
Well, no. Yeah, the headline was, "Do you want to be a Spice Boy?" And I actually went, "You have got to be kidding me." They, like, because these Spice Girls have become so big, they're going to make the Spice Boys. I was like, that is such a bad idea. Like, how dare they? This is so bad, you know, And I actually flicked past quite angry about it, sort of thing, like, what? I can't believe it. And then the cogs, I was like, well, they probably wouldn't call it the Spice Boys. And flick back, no. I don't want to be a boy band, man. No, I grew up like listening to Nirvana, and I was into like dance music and stuff. I was like, don't know about that. And then I was like, yeah, but you know, no. I did this like a good few times. In the end, I went down because it said, like, come on Saturday morning, bring a backing track and your dancing shoes. And I went down and I just showed my mum. I said, hey, Mum, what do you think of that? And she'd obviously seen it, because she was like, I did see that. I said, what do you think? And she went, should we just go? Should we just go and see what happens? Like, yeah, all right then. So I remember rustling up a backing track pretty quickly that week and trying to, probably Yellow Pages in those days, trying to find someone to get a backing track together. And it was real basic, sang Freedom in the audition. But yeah, it was a mad audition, 3,000 people turning up. It was a crazy media circus. Spice Girl tribute bands come in and like proper press their paps, taking pictures of it all. And it was very kind of, what the hell am I doing here? Like,
what did that feel like as a 17-year-old boy from Bromsgrove? Like, that's such an alien thing, I can imagine.
It was super alien. I mean, even just being in London anyway, and then take this thing that I'm sort of a part of, or in a way causing, taking over streets into Covent Garden and stuff. It was odd. But I also remember my mom was driving me mad because she was in the queue with me and she was like talking the whole time. And I was like, I had a few little notes. I was like, in the end, I said, Mom, can you go and go to a cafe, right? And I will meet you. Or I can't remember now how we worked it out, but I was like, I'll meet you. Can I just do this? Like, just leave me alone. So she went off. And yeah, I think it had hit the news because of the Spice Girls. And they knew what they were doing. And it was behind the scenes. So the story was that the managers of Five originally put the Spice Girls together, and they developed them for about a year. But the Spice Girls then left them and went with Simon Fuller, who then went on to S Club 7 and all of this. So Simon Cowell contacted those guys saying, well, they've obviously got an eye for something, for putting acts together. They obviously can see and they can do this because they've done it so well with these girls. Let's do it, but let's do it with boys. Hence why we were originally, working title was the Spice Girls. It's just mad. And it was like cattle. Literally, I'm surprised they didn't have those prodders. It was like 10 at a time.
A five branding.
Yeah, it's just, all right. And I felt really awkward. Like I wasn't a dancer. It wasn't my thing. I'd never had a dance class in my life. And I went into this sort of studio and I had a rucksack on and I'd walked in, I was barely putting the rucksack down. Music started playing. I turned around and there's people windmilling, break dancing. I mean, really going for it. And I was like, oh. And I felt like, oh, this is awkward. So I just literally bobbed very casually side to side. To be honest, at this point, being with an older head, I think they were just A, looking at like the look, and B, do they have a modicum of rhythm at all? And if they have a modicum of rhythm, if they've got no rhythm and they've got two left feet completely, then that'll be hard for them. Do you know what I mean?
Can it be taught?
And if you got yeah. So if you got a piece of paper, you went through to the singing round, and then you went in on your own, and it was the actual manager, Chris Herbert, and he was in this room. There was a camera set up, and he went, "Don't step between these two lines. Where's your back and take? Off you go. Sing it." And they were like, "Yeah, thank you. Shake hands. We'll be in touch." And that was it.
What do you think? Because did I hear right that you guys almost arranged yourself into a group before they actually put you together as a group? And if so, like, no, we didn't arrange ourselves into a group. We were put so that was that. I didn't see any of the other guys that ended up being in the band. And then they said 3 weeks. They said, we will be in touch. Don't call us, we'll call you. Okay, so I then go back to school and I started, once you've entered into something, you start going, well, even if I turn it down, I kind of want it now. In my head, I was like, I want that call now. I want to get through to the next round. And then I didn't hear a thing for a week went by, another week went by. And I remember before mobile phones, and there was a pay phone at school, and it was lunchtime, and I went and called my mom
at lunchtime and she didn't answer the house phone. When I got home that night, I said, listen, I called today and, you know, you didn't answer. And like, what if that was the management for the thing? And she laughed very calmly. And I remember this going in, she was like, Rich, I think you should value yourself a little more. Do you not think in this big band that they're trying to create, if they want you, do you not think that, and they don't get through the first time, do you not think they'll try again? And I thought, yeah, that's actually true, Mum, you know, but can you make sure you answer next time? and then yeah, it was 2 or 3 weeks, and they did it by letter, proper snail mail letter, yeah. And it was like, look, we invite you to come down, and then that was a studio, Nomis Studios, because Supergrass were rehearsing there, and I remember thinking that's really cool. That the room smelt interesting, and
Supergrass.
Yeah, exactly. And and then they'd whittled it down from 3,000 to 14 people, 14 hopefuls, and they welcomed us, and very quickly they put us 5 together. They had a second 5 and a 4. And there was a song that they'd sent us called Turn It Into Something Good. It was quite a lot more boy bandy than we ended up being, actually, but it was a decent enough song, and we'd had to learn it, and we were sort of split into you sing this line, you sing that line, we did a few rehearsals of that, and then we had to get up on this stage. They were proper film cameras. It was like they'd already had the idea for Pop Idol and for X Factor, and it was almost like they kind of were trying to do that with us, like a behind the scenes making of a band, but we were a little too blue, too sweary, and too functional for that in the end they scrapped that idea and the cameras went away. Well,
that's rock and roll, at least.
Yeah, no, well, it was like, the thing was, we'd break out into fights months into it. We'd break out into full-scale fights, but the director, this Aussie woman, we used to joke about it, because she'd be like, they'd miss it. So then they'd be like, Scott, could you just punch Jay in the face again? I'd be like, you've missed the moment. We can't, like, orchestrate it and pretend to do it. It just happened. Like, you can't be there with the camera and get it. Like, it's your problem. So it just wasn't working out. So they scrapped it.
What do you think made them decide on you guys as the 5? What made you stand out in a group of 3,000 people, do you think?
I mean, I honestly don't know. Like, I mean, it was just what they were looking for. I know that obviously the thing that worked with the Spice Girls was that there were 5 very different characters and very different looks. And it's almost like there's someone for everyone, I think, is the thinking behind that. So I think, that was the same with us 5, very different looks, sounding, characters, all of it, which is fine and it works. But it makes for an interesting dynamic interpersonally behind the scenes, especially when you add, although, I mean, girls can be pretty bitchy, can't they? But when you add that 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old testosterone, egos, insecurities, and you put, I mean, it was interesting to say the least, It was a pretty interesting environment.
So you mentioned like 17, 18, 19-year-old testosterone, egos, insecurities, and now you're thrust into the world of fame, international fame, relatively quickly. Like, how was that process? Like, it must have been a huge change in lifestyle, and like, how did that affect you in the early stages in particular?
So in the early stages, I do remember, being in the front seat of the people carrier at a traffic light in London, and a middle-aged, or like what seemed to me a middle-aged guy at the time. He was probably about 30, but no, I think he was older than that. And he was like, he sort of did a double take at me, And I think this was before we'd even released our first single kind of thing, but we'd done a few magazine bits and whatnot. And he's sort of done a double take and he's going, "Oh, what was Richie?" And I was like, "Oh, that's weird. Like, how does he know me?" I didn't even think the band. And like, I was like, "How does he know me? Like, that's really weird." That was one thing. Then there was, we lived together and there was literally girls camped out at the end of the driveway. Yeah, there was girls camped out, but the thing is you could never escape it. Because of that, you could never escape it, that's when it started becoming a mental endurance. Because as much as you love your fans and everything, like genuinely, like it's not a cliche, but they put you where we knew that. But mentally, you could never switch off because it was even on your doorstep, literally the whole time. I mean, you know, this is where it gets weird. So anyway, I'll get back to that. But what was the other thing going into a shopping centre. And all of a sudden, and to begin with, it was fun because you're 17, 18, and you're like, yeah, sort of Charlie Big Bananas. You're like, get this, man. This is crazy. You know, and it was kind of enjoyable. And, you know, but you end up with hordes of often usually teenage girls around you. And in those days it was, can you sign this? Can you sign that? Da-da. And that was all right. But then you start to realize I can't actually get any shopping done when I go shopping anymore. I can't do it. Like, how's that going to work? And it was before the days of internet where you could just sit and order it online. And so I always say fame is fun for 6 months. And then, you know, then I used to say, I wish it had an off switch. I wish I could go to a restaurant and turn it off, or even, especially when you are emotionally and mentally exhausted and all you want to do is pop to the local store and get a pint of milk or whatever. And, you know, you're constantly being pointed at, shouted at. You know, there's just some moments, you imagine every moment in your life. There's some moments that you're like, yeah, bring it on. But there'd be other moments, maybe you've had a death in the family or, you know, serious moments, and kind of, you just kind of, and you're at the height of like fame where you're being sort of pointed at and all that. Just sometimes you wish it wasn't there. You're just like, oh, I'm not in the mood today. I haven't got it in me to talk. I've got nothing to say. I'm in my own brain. Do you know what I mean?
Did you feel you had a pressure to be personable in those moments because of the
Absolutely.
potential backlash that would come if you were, oh, Richie was rude, you know, and you don't know anything
about it? Backlash. It's just that, you know, they're another human being that, you know, you've put yourself in that position in a sense. So, you know, I don't think, unless somebody's been really, really rude to me, I have never once been rude to anyone, ever. You know, I think I've explained sometimes, maybe if I've like had 2 hours sleep and I've been flying or whatever, I've said, you're gonna have to excuse me, I'm really tired, but, you know, yeah, can I, you know, but yeah, no, you know, you can never be rude, never. It's not necessary. It's just not necessary.
I remember that's something that stuck out about you when you trained me in Virgin. It was the, like, any day you would say when you were tired, when you had a big gig or a big weekend or something like this, but incredibly humble. Like, talk about, like, for a person who was thrust into fame at a young age, no ego, like, not gone to your head whatsoever.
No.
You know, something you held very much close to you throughout this process. Was there times where it sort of went that way, or have you always managed to stay quite level-headed through the process?
I'd say it was a roller coaster. As far as level-headed, yeah, there's certainly been an element of level-headed, and I think it was easier in that, as much as, you know, it was an interesting dynamic in the band, we were all from working class backgrounds, essentially, you know, working class parents. And so if anyone did start to get a bit whatever, the rest of us would shoot them down anyway. You know, you like Tupac? Do you know what I mean? Or like, do you know what I mean? Like, so yeah, in that sense, you know, we keep each other down to earth. And stuff like that. So yeah, but, you know, to me, you know, the band, and this is what people don't, it's a tough thing to explain, because it was such an amazing experience, jamming with Queen, opening the Brits, and it sounds like a dream, and it was. But it was also a mental and physical endurance test, because as a band, and I'm not sure there's ever been, like, this has ever happened before, but very early on, from the first single, the USA, because the Backstreet Boys had started hitting in America, Arista Records instantly were looking for a band of a similar nature to promote. We were just taking off, or about to take off in the UK, so they got straight on the phone. Then you had, like, you know, getting over to Asia, Australia and everything, and then the rest of Europe. So within 2 years, they tried to get us to break the whole globe in one hit. And quite honestly, I mean, they don't, it's not like it's regulated time, you know. I mean, what they kind of expected of us was, when you think about it, it was ridiculous. It truly was ridiculous, but you know, that took its toll on us. And if, you know, and actually I saw a man called Richard Griffiths, who was the head of RCA Records Europe when we were signed. So he was kind of like Cowell's boss. And then he ended up, him and Cowell would feed him all the X Factor winners. So he ended up managing One Direction. And we were playing V Festival, and we saw Richard backstage. He was there with Ollie Murs. And, you know, we went up and we said, hey, you know, how you doing? And we were like, oh, because we really annoyed the record company. Like, we really pissed them off, man. And, but, you know, we were like, hey, Rich. And he was like, oh, guys, you know, how you doing? You crazy cats. And we were like, and I said, you know, because I'd been seeing One Direction, and I sort of watched their journey from afar a little bit, sort of with interest. And I always thought, they've been going a few years now, but they still look fresh. You see some pictures of us, even in proper shoots, and you can see we look absolutely cabbage. Like, I mean, you can't hide it. We look tired. And I said, how do you do that? And he said, look, I've got a confession to make. You know, we learnt from your generation of bands, and we learned how far to push people before they break. We learned what their breaking points are. And so, and I can't remember what the formula was, but it was like, if they do a month on, if they go and travel and they do a month working, we give them 2 weeks off. So they do a month intense work, they have 2 weeks off, they go home, they see their folks, you know, we had 2 days off in 1 year.
Yeah.
Including Christmas.
You see it all the time with you know, particularly in the music industry, particularly with like pop and rock stars, where people fall into drinking, drugs, or just something to sort of like either power them through that sort of schedule, or, as you say, without it being having an off switch, just as a mental break. I mean, did you guys ever fall into that realm, trying to just keep ahead of the curve?
I never, like, drugs weren't a part of the Five story, but yeah, we definitely drank. And I think, you know, like a lot of people do, you know, all right, we drank because we're at a party, say, but sometimes I don't know, there's something about being in a band where you always feel that you have to take it that one step further. I don't know why. It's like it's a stupid kind of, I suppose, testosterone driven boy mentality, but you know, you're like, well, yeah, we've got to go that bit harder. And, you know, especially when you've got like Westlife, you know, who have the different image and they sing ballads, but you know, they're Irish boys, they can drink, do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not, you know, you can't be outdone by Westlife. So yeah, you know, I think sometimes in my life I've definitely drunk to escape my own headspace at times. You know, I've definitely done that and used that as a kind of crutch or whatever. Yeah, it's not healthy, but I've done it.
It almost seems like, despite being sort of like burning the candle at both ends, that you boys did seem to manage to do something where you escaped the pitfalls that a lot of people fall down. Like, is it something about coming from, maybe all come from a working class background, that just keeps yourself in check, and it's supposed to be hard work, and there's that less of entitlement? Or what do you think that is that meant that you managed to keep, I don't say, as normal a life as you can get, despite obviously all these things thrown at you at such a young age?
Another thing I think as well regarding the pitfalls is like I explained earlier, and I genuinely think this actually, because you're young, you're impressionable, you're living in, you know, a major world city, coming from Birmingham, going to London, so it's a new place and everything, that, you know, you could easily fall into pitfalls. You know what? We didn't have the time to, because, you know, like I see other bands, other sort of contemporary bands, where, you know, and they know loads of people, whereas like I know people from, like, you know, for argument's sake, Eamon Holmes, you know, and people like that, you know, presenters that you've sat and you've chatted with on the sofas and whatnot. But, you know, I didn't really, I'd get to a party, you know, maybe I'd do the Brits or whatever, you know, the after show when we won the thing, but too often I was around the world, or like, you know, I'd worked that much that when I was in London, by the time I'd finished a day's work and it's like 8 o'clock at night, I'm like, you know what, I've got to get up at 4:30 in the morning. Last thing I want to do is go out tonight. I'm just going to go and collapse on my bed. And get up and do the same thing again tomorrow, because we're flying to New York, you know? So, yeah, I think we were kept busy enough that I think we probably, if we'd have been more of a UK-based band that only stayed there, possibly that could have happened a lot quicker. Because I think, I mean, if you take the 5 of us, like I know, like in the big reunion, and I don't speak to Abs anymore. I wish him well, no, you know, but we just don't talk. But, you know, I mean, he really lost the plot, you know, and he did, you know, get into drugs and stuff. And he's, you know, he's not, I'm not telling any secrets here. He's been open about that. But, yeah, I mean, like, you know, that was more afterwards. And that's the thing, we all, Abs had a bit of a career afterwards. I nearly had a career. Simon Cowell got me in his office. And this is no disrespect to Darren Hayes, by the way, because I've met Darren and he's a lovely guy, but just that he's the type of music he does is not my type of music. You know, I'm a bit more grungy and stuff like that. And I don't know, I think it's the blue eyes or whatever, but Cowell got me in, and I'd done a few demos, and he was like, Rich, I want to turn you into the next Darren Hayes. I just remember at the time he was like musically my pet hate. And I was like, oh. And I went and did a couple of demos, and I remember putting it on my system in my house and just listening to it. And I just went, I can't do this. I can't step out and look an audience in the eyes and sell this. I can't do it. So that's when I sort of lost the plot, moved away. And yeah, I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. And then I had a very strange experience. And this is what I mean. Like, you know, it really took it out of me, and only to the depths. I probably should have had some counseling, actually, to be fair. Or, you know what I mean? It's taken me 20 years to sort of properly get my head around it, to the point that, you know, you have trust issues because things are coming at you, people are coming at you, papers are finding out, you're like, who's telling them this? What the hell? You don't know who to trust. People that don't really want to be your friend because they care about you. They want to be Ritchie Neville's mate. Do you know what I mean? Or whatever. You know, there's a lot of things that, you know, you've got to sort of work out. And yeah, I kind of, you know, the years after that, I had this burning desire to make music, but it wasn't like it was before. This is where the law of attraction, I don't know if you've heard of the law of attraction, but I'm a big believer in the law of attraction. You know, I definitely was obsessive, like we spoke about, you know, about before getting in the band, you know, I visualized it, not because I'd heard of the law of attraction, it wasn't even spoken about then, but I was obsessed, but I lived it. You know, they say about like visualizing to the point that you can feel it. I felt walking out on stage in front of thousands of people. And it was weird because 3 separate psychics told, my sister used to go to psychics and she'd be like, you've come up in my thing again today. It's always, you've got a younger brother. And they'd be like, oh yeah. And they'd be like, one said, I see thousands of people and hands in the air and like a concert, stuff like that. Another one said, oh, your younger brother, he's going to be famous. Like really weird. It's making me go goose pimply. This was all told to me before the band even happened.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. And I said to a friend who's still a great friend of mine, one of my best friends, when I first joined the school, he said to me, what are you going to do? It was all a little cocky shit. What do you want to be when you grow up? It was about 12, 11 years old. And this is genuinely what I said, and I believed it. I said, when I'm 16, I'm going to go to London and I'm going to be famous. And he went, do you know how hard that is? And I went, watch. I went, watch. And he said, like, when I was 17, he was like, you were 1 year out. He was like, I can't believe it. Like, he's like, this is mind blowing. I've never seen anything like it in my life. I don't know why. But I then during the band, all these other things crept in, all these other feelings. You know, like I said, it was quite a toxic environment. You know, and kind of the dream sort of became a very, you know, you were tired, and then negativity creeps in, and I hadn't had enough life experience to know what was going on in my head, kind of thing, you know, and maturity. So a lot of negativity, and then like, I don't know, like I felt like I was, I guess, a little bit burned by the industry, burned by the experience. Negative things crept in, and then it was tough. Those years after the band, it was tough, and I was like, I just don't even know who I am anymore, and I can't even escape. What I used to say was, I feel like I'm living a ghost. It's like I've gone and done a job for 5 years, but I can't escape it. I still go down the shop and I'm still, oh, you're that guy, but that guy isn't me. And I you know, so it was like I really needed to just connect with who I was before the band, and like really, you know. So that's why I didn't do anything for those reasons. Like I said, I probably should have had a lot of counselling and spoken to someone, and you know what I mean. But I didn't. I just sort of grinded through it myself, you know, and through time, you know. But it's like I said, it took a while.
I think that's something that happens very often. There's that term gold medal syndrome, when people go to the Olympics and all their focus is solely on that Olympic Games, and they win the gold medal, and it should be the height of their career, and feel a little bit empty because, like, well, what do I do now? And I can't even imagine.
No, Si, you're blowing my mind, because I've never ever heard of this. Like, but this is exactly what it was. Exactly what it was.
I remember. I can't even imagine what it's like on the level that you've dealt with it. But I've noticed that doing like fitness photo shoots, where I've gone literally every second, every inch, every meal, every step that I take is geared towards this photo shoot day. And I go there and I look great. And Monday happens. I'm like, nothing's changed. It's still a normal Monday. But all that goal I had has just disappeared. You're sort of walking aimlessly. And yeah, it's super common with people in these things. And we see it, like Dorian Yates coming off when he finished being Mr. Olympia, bodybuilding stage. He went through a massive period of like depression, drinking. Guys were giving him their wives apparently, just like because he loved Dorian Yates, and he just went through this big spiral. And I think a lot of people don't know what it is, and just think they feel, why don't I feel this way anymore? Because I did for so much.
Yeah, definitely. Totally. I mean, when I look at pictures of myself, it's strange as well, because when I was 17, I felt, as you do, indestructible. I felt super grown up. I was a man. Do you know what I mean? I'm a man. I can deal with. But now I look at pictures. You know, pictures will come up of myself. Not so much the photo shoots, but more when we signed the record deal, or that Scott's dad took. But you know, and I look and I go, shit, man. Right, you are literally a kid. You're a child. like you are a child. And and then having a child myself, I do really worry about that. Like, obviously, you have to let people go and do that, whatever they do. But, I think I would have had a much, it isn't hindsight wonderful, but I think it would have been a lot better had I been 20, 21, 22 and got into it rather than just 16, 17. Yeah. And had a bit more life experience and just knowing what the world was about. I used to feel a lot of my sense of humor as well. Like I didn't feel like I could be myself when I joined the band, because you know me, Si, like, just stupid humor, like, bigging myself up, but in a stupid way. Whereas I didn't feel I could do that, because I thought people are going to misunderstand this and think that I'm actually being serious.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just a lot of stuff. Whereas I wouldn't have cared as much if I was like in my 20s. I don't care anymore. I can be goofy and not worry about it. Whereas I'm like, you double think yourself at 17, because
And I think that's something that everyone goes to, right? You realize as you get older, you realize, like you mentioned friends earlier on, but certain friends that didn't want to be friends with you, they want to be friends with Ritchie Neville. They want to be friends with Richard Dobson. They want to be friends with Ritchie Neville. It's, I think, as you get older, obviously, this again, everything is exaggerated up to 11 when it comes to being thrust into fame, and these things are exaggerated. But you realize who your true friends are. That friendship pool gets smaller. You start to reanalyze your priorities. And like no one knows that at 17, right? And I suppose you've got to make your own mistakes, but being thrown into the deep end like you were is a tough thing. Did anyone prepare you for it? Did anyone give you that bit of tap on the shoulder and go, look, this is what's to come, get ready?
No, do you know what? I waited for that. I was like, I was waiting for that. I always thought, well, that's going to come, surely. I mean, we had we moved in May 97, and we were top 10 by December. So that's not a lot of time. We made an album and we were releasing the first single and it made top 10. So, this conversation, I remember we had 1 hour's media training where they taught something that I went, that's interesting. Okay. I remember lodging that. They said, look, you have to be careful, because a journalist could say, for argument's sake, and I'm not saying this is the example I think that they use, the Queen Mother's a bitch, right? And then you go, yeah. And then they can quote you as saying what they said. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. Okay, I'll remember that then. You got to really watch yourself with these journalists, kind of thing. But so we had that. But other than that, I was waiting for kind of management or someone to come, put their arm around us and go, this is what to expect. And no, never happened. It was literally like thrown into the lion's den. Boom, off you go, cope with that.
I suppose that's the advantage you can have now. You're saying, worrying about your daughter, and like at least if she went into something, whatever realm it is, in the public eye or not, you now have that life experience to be that arm on the shoulder that you never had.
Yeah.
And like, I think that's the big thing. You sort of learn from, in a way, from sort of growing up and making those mistakes the hard way, I suppose.
Yeah, equally, you can't. I know I would never be told, and when you are young, and I know anyway from like my daughter's very strong-willed, so by the time she's 17, I've got no chance. So I know anyway. I can say, look, just think about this, but I know you're going to do what you think anyway. So I don't need those kind of battles in my life. I'll tell you what I think, and you do with that information what you like, mate.
You mentioned tabloids and journalists. Like, was that something that's had a bit of impact in your life, or was that something you just sort of brushed off and just like, it's never really got to me? I know what it is from that little bit they said, and it's prepared me, or did it affect you?
No, that did prepare you, but then there were times where I can't remember an example. I can actually remember someone else's example. And it was Abs, actually. And like, there was a piece in the paper that said that he bought one of his family members a lime green car of some description, which he never did. And they'd just make up. It was like, they were like, what's the big band at the moment? Fine, we need a story about it, but we don't have a story about it. Okay, what can we write about them then? And I guess, writing that, it's not like Abs is going to take out a lawsuit over the fact that he bought his cousin a lime green Ford Fiesta, is he? Do you know what I mean? It's hardly scandalous, but it's just like they just want to tick the boxes and have the band in the things, but they could, you know, they'd write just completely made up stuff. Like it was just completely made up. You're like, what? Okay, apparently. I mean, there was the Sunday Sport, there was a brilliant story about me having a night of passion with a stripper that I have never seen in my life. But you know, you just, that's just how it is. You just accept it. Okay. Well, if it did happen, it sounds like it was fun.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Going into sort of like early on, you mentioned about the boy band image and saying having the right look. And obviously, certainly in the 90s, that was such a big thing of like, you said Spice Girls, all had different looks. And that was part of what their appeal was. Yeah. So like, did you feel you had the pressure in a way to stay in tip-top shape or stay looking a certain way during that period? Or was this something that you took in your stride?
Again, we didn't have the time to. We literally had no time. Like there was no time for gym and stuff like that. I mean, we were performing a lot, and that involves getting extremely sweaty and it's high intensity, lots of routine. So in a sense, we were doing loads of cardio. But no, and actually in the early part, I got quite fat because it was quick fix McDonald's every meal, and to the point that we had to bring it up with them. Look, you know, we're working 18-hour days. We're not getting the nutrition we need. We're putting on weight. You know, what we're supposed to be in a boy band, you know, or like a pop band, you know. And then as soon as the diet changed and with all that cardio, you know, the weight just flew off, and that was that. But no, it was, yeah, there just simply wasn't the time.
So what with all that, you know, obviously a lot of my listeners doing what I do are going to be people that are very, very busy people that want to stay in shape. Like you said, you had no time. And obviously you may have had people looking after you a little bit, but this is still a trouble that many people face. But how do you, obviously you mentioned the nutrition changing and getting in shape again, but how did you stay in decent shape on the road?
So honestly, in those days, I mean, we were 17 to 21, 22. I think we did go to the gym a tiny bit, but I got into the gym after the band. And that was because, actually it was because I was so used to, you know, the way they talk about people that have been in the military and they have so regimented everything that when they come out of the military, they struggle with it. They're like, oh, I don't know what to do. Well, like it was that. And I replaced my work schedule with the gym. So, you know, I'd get up at 5, I'd play Rocky training montages. and I knew nothing really about, you know, I didn't have any knowledge. I just went and I just started doing stuff, and I was doing it all wrong. I mean, I'd go on like a psycho. I'd go on the treadmill for an hour, and other guys like that I kind of knew, they'd be like, "You're a psycho, man." I'd get on there and I'd be like practically sprinting for an hour, and then I'd go and do weights. But I didn't realize I was doing it the wrong way around, and I was really fatigued from that long run. And then, you know, but I'd be in there for like 5 hours, you know, training my little socks off, and people would be like, "What are you training for?" I don't know, I just need to do something. I've got to get rid of this energy. But it was actually because I put on a load of, I remember I was shamed by someone. I took my top off and I realized that because I'd stopped doing all this cardio and I was eating what I wanted, and probably drinking a bit, and they were like, "Oh my God, dude, like you've put on quite a bit of weight." And I didn't even realize. I was like, "Oh yeah, I have, haven't I?" And then I got into the gym.
New look lighting. You can sort of see abs if you find the right lights. You know, I've been. If someone takes a back, and you're like, "Oh my God."
Yeah.
Been there many times.
Yeah.
But I always remember vividly when you were training at Virgin, and I remember my boss coming up to me and going, "There's a guy here who says he wants to get in shape for a photo shoot, and I recommended you." I was like, "Okay, what's the guy's name?" He said your name. It didn't twig, and I went back to my flat, and my flatmate who also worked for the gym was playing your album on repeat. I was like, "What are you doing playing all this 5?" He goes, "You'll never guess who was in the gym today." I was like, Oh, and I remember meeting you when you were talking about this photo shoot. You never told me what it was. You said, I've got a shoot in this many weeks, and we got to work.
Yeah.
And I remember you finish off, and finished version, went on your way. And I remember a couple of weeks later that one of my best mates sent me a picture going, is this the shoot you were training him for? And do you remember what the shoot was that we were talking about?
Yeah, so of course I remember what shoot.
I'm no surprise that you didn't tell me. Like, I was pretty shocked when I just saw like you in all your glory with your hands.
Yeah, look, that does. The annoying thing as well is Scott from the band has it come up on his phone when I call him. And I'm like, dude, do you have to? Like, you've got kids. Like, please, can you not do that? Like, I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, I mean, is what it is. Yeah, I did a nude shoot.
Good job.
Yeah, and thanks to you, I didn't look so bad. Funnily enough, I remember when I got my kit off for the shoot, they were like, man, you look like a bodybuilder. So, that was cool. Yeah.
I will, take, especially what 8-9 years ago now, like, certainly earlier days in my career, I'll take that as a big tick in the win column there.
Yeah, definitely. Cool.
So like going on a little bit from your career there, I mean, like you mentioned, obviously the hard times almost were coming out the band. Like you mentioned powering through it. Like, what is there anything you feel that helped you get through that? Like, how did you get the love back? Because you're touring with them, with 3 of the guys, including yourself now. So obviously that love came back. Is it just time, or was there moments?
The love for okay, well, so this is where I guess my spirituality comes into it, and my kind of beliefs and stuff, because I've always been so driven. Like I said, I knew what I wanted to do. And because I speak to some people, and I feel for them actually when they don't know what they want to do. That's hard. And having been so driven, and then coming out of it and going, not that I didn't want to do it, but I just not sure I had enough I was a bit worn down by it or something. I was like, I know that I don't have enough in my tank to attack that right now. I don't trust anyone in the industry. And like, I just don't know what I want to do. That was where the problem started for me. And I found that I describe it as rudderless in the ocean. When you have a goal and you know what you want to do and you're going to do everything you can to get there, obviously that gives you direction. So when the winds come, you can still go towards that thing. Whereas when you don't have a direction and the winds come, you get pushed all over the place, and you're from one thing to the next, and nothing sort of driving you forward. And I found that unbelievably difficult. I mean, it truly was so hard. And my partner at the time, I turned up at her house actually, and I'd been sat in my place, and I don't know, my head was done in. There was a few things going on in my life. It was, within the sort of 2 years after the band, and I'd started seeing her, and she lived up in Oxfordshire. And I don't know, I don't think I even called her, I just wasn't feeling good, and I knew the kind of person she was anyway. And I packed a little bag and I jumped in my car, and it was a sunny day, and I'd been to her house anyway, and I just knocked on the door, and I was like, I don't feel so great, like my head's a bit mashed, can I stay here for a bit? And she was like, yeah, come in. And I didn't leave for 5 years. I literally didn't leave for 5 years. But she said at the time, I have never seen anybody as lost as you are. I've never seen anybody as lost. And that's where I did go into negative habits, and I hit drink quite hard. And I drank because I was depressed, but I didn't acknowledge that I was depressed. I just knew I felt really, really rubbish. And I just I couldn't make a decision. I was like, where'd you go? And I guess the fame at that time as well was still quite high. And it felt very restrictive. And I didn't realize there was other ways of, you know, earning even a living and stuff, because people think you earn millions, but we're the classic story of, you know, the record company and everything, and didn't get all that much. So, you know, to be super famous at the time and also kind of run out of money, that is a hard gig. You know, that's not nice. And so, yeah, you know, I just sort of, I don't know, I froze. I was just in a mess. So that happened, and I struggled for years, actually. And I ended up doing other things. I did a bit of, actually what it was I'd been sat kind of, well, I've mentioned the drinking. So I had a 3 o'clock cut-off point, and I'd sit depressed till 3 o'clock, and I'd crack a bottle of brandy and I'd drink it neat out the bottle, or I'd have a couple of pints kind of thing. And as soon as I felt that kind of drunkenness kick in, I could start to laugh about it a little bit more. Whereas I couldn't when I wasn't. It was just, you know, it was how I coped. Anyway, after a couple of years of really just being totally lost, her mom's boss was like, look, my boss is in a right state. He's renovating this like warehouse. He's never going to get it completed in time that he reckons it is. He needs some help. You know, do you reckon you could help him? And I was like, yeah, all right. And just just simply getting out, doing something. Like, so I was just like, and it was manual, it was physical. It was like, you know, we were banging walls down and we were doing this and stuff like that. And I'd go home and I'd go, I enjoyed that today. Like, I really, you know, and it sort of started this different thing sort of rolling. Yeah. And so I, essentially for 10 years, I struggled because I just didn't know what I wanted to do. And you know what? In all honesty, nothing worked out. Particularly, it was like, God, anything, can I just cut a break? Mm. And then the big reunion came along, because the band was something that I was like completely done with. I was like, that was something that happened. You know, it's done. And everyone was like, dude, like, you know, you're a singer, you're a performer. Like, that's what you need to be doing. You should be doing that. Like, no. I'm not doing that again. I'm not doing that again. No. I want to do something else. I can't do it. And then big reunion came along. I nearly didn't do it. And never had stage fright like it, actually, when the first show. And the whole point, you know, I was going to do the big reunion. I was going to go back to Australia. I was living in Australia at the time. And I've never had stage fright like it. My brain, it was like the start of the show. We're behind these big doors that are going to open. It was like, 5. And my brain was I actually said to myself, I want to run. Is there anywhere I can run to? Like, how can I get out of this? And I was like, you can't get out of it. And I almost froze. And Scott said he saw me. He was like, he's not going to do it. And it was We Will Rock You. So it was like, I had to bring the mic up. And he was like, I was half thinking he's not himself. And even my mom watching it, she said, what happened the first few moments you walked out? I said, I hadn't been on stage for 10 years. And I just was like, whoa. And then I brought the mic up to my mouth, and within about another 5 or 6 seconds, I guess, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I remember this. And I sort of got into the swing of it. And then we went on to do a tour. And then all that kind of like, because I was like, you know, like I said, I was grungy and I was into dance. So I had this pop music kind of like shame a little bit. Oh yeah, pop band. And I was like, you know what, this is actually cool. Like, and I really embraced. It's like, no, we've made a lot of people happy. And yeah, and I don't know, it was just beautiful to sort of get out. And I was like, this is actually really nice. And it's just been non-stop. Like, there's just been such a demand for it to just go out. And it was like, well, yeah, okay, cool. Like, I'm back performing, and you know, it is an amazing gift to just go out and make thousands of people happy every night.
I can imagine it's a feeling like no other walking on stage, and
nothing like it.
And I think you mean what you show there is the power of something like momentum, right? You said rudderless, and you lost that momentum, and then just got up doing something. It was like manual labor work, and then it was like having a restaurant in Australia, and just these one things led to another. These little small steps of just doing something, taking ownership back. And then when the opportunity
making a decision, like something that's come up recently is like, I say this to Ella, you know, my daughter, even if it's the wrong decision, make the decision. Make, you know, like Anthony Robbins actually helped me a lot. I watched one of his things, and you know, he's like, decide. It's to decide, cut all things off, make a decision, and go with that. Procrastination is not good. Okay, you might need to look at some facts, make an educated decision, but eventually you have to make that decision, and you've got to just go with whatever. And if there's no such thing as failure. I really believe that there's no such thing as failure, only feedback. You know, so get your ego out of the way, you know, because just go, okay, that didn't work. You know, that whole Thomas Edison cliche and the light bulb, you know, he found 300 ways of not to do it before he found the way to do it. And if you can see it like that and not see it as, well, no, it didn't work out, that means I'm rubbish. You cannot fail in the end.
I always think failure only happens if you stop trying. Like, I get clients talking about dieting, and they go, I failed a diet. Did you? Or did you stop trying? If you kept on going, you'd have found a solution. You'd have found a way of working around it. Like I genuinely, truly believe that. And then looking back over mistakes that I've made in my life, you remember the failures more than the successes. Other than like the big things, like in your case, maybe playing the Brit Awards, the reunion show, they're big things. Like Ellie, you like big moments in life you remember. But generally, the things that have molded me are not the small wins fall into the wayside. It's those moments of failure where I can look back and go, do you know what? I'm glad I did that, because I wouldn't even, they always tend to work out a year later. There's always a way you can look back and go, actually, that led to this, that led to this. And I'm now glad that happened.
Exactly. And that's where, you know, like religious people would call, you know, that faith. That's what, to me, having faith is. Faith in that everything is happening as it should, the wins, the failures, and everything, for you as a soul or a human being to come and learn what you came here to learn in your path. And, you know, that's why you shouldn't, you know, you can be inspired by other people, but you shouldn't be comparing yourself to other people. You can go, I like that trait, I'd like to take on that. And you just pick and choose what you want to take on to become whatever it is you want to become, you know?
I suppose it's inspiration rather than comparison, right? Like what we see on Instagram is always people's highlight reels. We don't, like, if you look back at, you know, if the Instagram was around in the days where 5 minutes highlight, you would have seen the best moments. You wouldn't have seen any of the moments we spoke about in the last hour. And if I was comparing myself, I wanted to be a performer to you, that would not allow me to be the best version of me. But if I was inspired by, there's a very, very different, the terminology has a completely different success rate.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we would, going back to that, we definitely would have got into trouble if social media had been around when we were, I am certain, no doubt whatsoever, I know that when we were young, and if we'd have been on a tour bus and we were really getting on it, someone would have said, I dare, and I know I can hear it, I dare you to take a picture of your ball sack and stick it on Instagram.
You know, this will be the soundbite for the show, right? You know, when I put a soundbite, that's going to be the line.
Yeah, but it would have happened. And I know you'd have woken up and you'd been like, I feel like a bad thing might have happened last night. What's the bad thing? And they'd be like, oh no, and you'd go on and you'd be like, oh, and there'd be like all these comments and stuff. That definitely would have happened. And I am so thankful that it wasn't around.
Touching on, like, you know, going on the back to the bravery thing and away from ball sacks for just a moment.
Sorry to lower the
tone. Oh, dude, like one of the things I love about doing this doing this podcast is the fact that I have grown up without any filter whatsoever. I am surprised at this stage I'm not cancelled. There is no off limits. I would rather a long form conversation that goes in the gutter than a tame, timid one. So you're all absolutely all good. But like two of the things I remember you doing in that time between 5 reunion and 5 finishing the first time was 2 reality TV shows in particular. I'm sure there's more, but the 2 I remember in particular. One is The Jump, which is one of the scariest propositions in the world, to jump off something really tall, especially for a man who's scared of heights like me. The second one I remember, which I think is actually more scary, was going on Take Me Out. I mean, there's no such thing as a more brutal environment than some of the women on that show.
Yeah. Do you know what? The beauty of it was, I wasn't an avid watcher of it. Right. So I was like, they were like, do you want to go on that? Obviously they pay you. And I was like, I did have to think about it. And I put a couple on YouTube. I've seen it, but I've not watched it, if you know what I mean. I knew what it was. And I was like, and then, oh, look, I could meet someone. I didn't go on it like to definitely find a partner. I went on it for a laugh. It'll be fun. And also they said, look, we want you to perform with the boys. I thought, oh, that's a great opportunity. Primetime Saturday, and all of that. So it was a semi-business decision, and also let's just go and have a bit of fun with it. But I must admit, when I got out, and there's however many of those girls, and you're like, they could say anything right now. That was, I felt a little bit naked or whatever in that moment. But
did you get a free trip to the Isle of Fernando's?
Yep.
Okay, I mean that it's worth it. Holiday to Tenerife, take that.
Yeah. Went on the date, went jet skiing, and had a few cocktails, and it was cool.
Cool. I mean, going off into the Jump, like what made you go on to that show? Like that is such a bold decision, and that is going headfirst into something. Yeah,
look. You know what? That wasn't a difficult decision to make, actually, that one, because it was like, right, do you want to do this show? I was like, what does it entail? I couldn't ski. I'd never skied. You learn to ski. It's like winter sports, winter Olympics. We're going to get all these kind of things, but it involved the ski jumping. I must admit, I was like, what? They're like, don't worry about it. We're not just going to throw you off the biggest ski jump in the world straight off. We'll teach you the ropes. We'll show you how to do it. I was like, well, yeah, all right. Let's give it a go. Like it sounds, I'll learn to get paid to learn to ski. Like seems like a pretty good choice to me. Good option. But I cannot tell you how scary when you see it on TV. That even the small jump, you see it on TV, and I would watch it, and I'd go, no, I'd do that. When you are stood at the top of that thing and you can't see where you're going to land, and you're in the metal, whatever they're called, rail things, and the minute you stand up, there's no backing out of it. You are going off the end. You can't not go off the end. So it's final, and you have to make that decision to stand up. Honestly, because I came in late. Everyone else had been doing training and stuff, and I came in late to the training. So they'd all done it. So that all the rest of like this, the celeb team and everyone were watching my first thing as well. And they're like, the guy who did it, great guy, and he did this like Jedi mind trick. He'd be like, look into my eyes. He's like, I don't want you to think about anything else. You look into my eyes, and when I say do it, you do it. Okay. And the first time I didn't, I have to admit, I couldn't. It took me a couple of goes. It was like, I promise you, just do it, And you stand up, and my knees shook. You're going. And I think I did. I can't remember. Maybe I landed it. Maybe I didn't. I'd only been skiing for 4 days, and I'm going down a ski jump. And that was that. And then you progress onto the next jump and stuff like that. But that was I sort of I watched a lot of military training videos. I was in the cadets growing up, and I find that kind of like pushing yourself to the endurance and that kind of thing really interesting. And it's actually weirdly a path I could have taken. And I even, you know, when I was lost, I was telling you I was lost. I had the forms to join the army. I was actually going to join, I was thinking about joining the army, and it was only that I didn't agree with the reasons that we went to Iraq.
Yeah.
That stopped me. I was like, I can't be a puppet for, you know, I can't do it. Because, yeah, you know, anyway. So yeah, back to the job.
Say that. It's interesting to say that though, because the guy who I had on the podcast last week, the one that went live today, he talked about exactly that. He was in the military for many years, and he talks about his moral values, and how I asked him that question, like, how does it feel like going to war? Like, do you think about why you're going, or you're just so wrapped in it? And he was like, you're there with the boys, and you're thinking about the boys to your left and the boys to your right.
You can't. Yeah, of course you. No, I understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm with you though. I've been in exactly the same position, because I've not to the level of closeness that you have, but I like the discipline, like the regiment. But I'm like, go into the army, even though I was a PTI, which would be the last person that would be sent out. You go, if you're going in with this, I don't want to go, don't do it. You always got to go in with that possibility. I want to do it, otherwise you just get started.
Yeah. No, absolutely. No, I remember hearing a story about a guy who hadn't thought about that, joined the Royal Marines, you know, was fit and got through it all, did all that mental endurance. And then then it was like, okay, off to wherever it was at the time. And it was only at that moment he went, hang on a minute, I'm going to have to hold a gun and I may have to kill someone. And I don't think I'm okay with that. And he had to go and speak, and he went, I know this seems unbelievable, but I can't pull the trigger. I don't want to be faced with having to take somebody's life, and I'm think I will hesitate, and that's not right. I can't do it. I've made the wrong decision, kind of thing, you know.
Wow, that's a brave move to do though, because how many people will probably think that way and just go out anyway? And
yeah.
You don't want to let their squaddies down.
Yeah, totally, yeah. So that the jump, you know, that kind of getting over the fear, you know, after about a week sort of doing the various different things, it was like a bombardment of information every day. I mean, I'd get to, you know, use so many calories, and I'd get to dinner, and I remember Sunita saying, look at your plate. You're supposed to eat the rainbow, because everything on my plate was carbs. It was like potato, just bright beige food. I was like, and I think watching those military documentaries and just going, right, I have to just train myself. When they say go, don't hesitate. Trust in the coaches. Trust in your own, you know, you'll get through it, and just do it. You know, speed skiing, skeleton. Skeleton was the worst. And I wasn't worried about skeleton. I thought, oh, yeah, no, it's fine. And I got on it. Your chin is an inch from the ice. And the first sort of bend, it's not too bad. And then you're going 100 kilometers an hour, and you've got no control over it. So, like, where they go up and they come down beautifully, you're not. You're going up, and then you're coming down, you're smashing the wall on the left-hand side. You're on a train. And I genuinely just held on for dear life, thinking, I'm going to break my neck. That was all I was thinking, is I'm going to break my neck. And when I got to the bottom, I yelped, yes. And it wasn't because like that was so fun. That was like, oh my God, I'm actually alive. But I genuinely thought, I'm going to break my neck. This is crazy. And you're only going to give you 2 more runs. They sort of said, well, just turn with your head a bit. And I thought, how much am I going to learn in 2 runs before I'm competing? I said, you know what? I'll take my odds, and I'll just go, and I'll actually just compete, because I'm going to learn nothing in 2 runs. It's pointless. I said, and I ended up winning that, because I just listened to what they said. They said, right, just I can't remember what it was. Do this with your head and stay very, very still and rigid in your body. And that's exactly what I did. And
Focus on keeping your head before you focus about moving your head.
Yes, yeah, exactly. But no, it was good. Just and just that kind of like, when they say go, just go. Don't think, just go.
It's amazing. I say this every time. It's almost becoming a catchphrase that podcasts always come full circle. And you mentioned like early on in the episode about going headfirst into a situation, and literally just essentially in your life just going when they say go.
Yeah.
But which is incredible and something like that, because I'm on edge and scared just hearing you talk about it, and I'm sat in my office very comfortably. So it must have been an amazing opportunity.
Yeah, it was brilliant. I really did have the best time. I mean, it was amazing, you know, like Steve Redgrave. I got on very well with Steve, and I just, you know, somebody, what was it, 5 or 6 gold medals at the Olympics. That's a certain type of character. So I just found talking with him extremely. I just pick his brains, and it's amazing to see people like that, because he was obsessive about rules, about like the rules within the things. He's a very accomplished skier, Steve, and you know, so he'd be, you know, obviously that's just, you know, how far, where are the rules, and how far can you bend the rules to get that split second? You know what I mean? Yeah, it's just an interesting thing. I
suppose it's a parallel. It's almost like comparable to the level of obsession you had with becoming a performer back in your 20s. It's his way of, in that same sort of vein of the things that you need to do, that going away, putting a single together, realizing it's 4 to 6 relays, and you go, oh, it's not quite right. It's the same way as like, where's that line to get me that half a second?
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, that's all it is, isn't it? It is, in sport, it is very often, it's that millisecond. Where can I shave that millisecond? And he was obviously, I mean, I wasn't even thinking about that. You know, I was just like trying to get as good as I could, everything as fast as possible. I mean, it was like, you know, competing at skiing, having only skied for 2 weeks, it's sort of, doing slalom, like, you know. And when I look back, I'm like, I don't, you know, because I've actually just started taking Ella. It's like a gift I wanted to give to Ella. I was like, I wanted to learn to ski. So we go to Chill Factor in Manchester, and she's gone through the thing. She's free skier now. And, you know, I love skiing's a lovely sort of free, you feel it's so much fun, especially when you know, just getting out in nature, any excuse to get out in nature. When you're at the top of that mountain, you're looking down. I don't know, again, that's where my spiritual side comes up. I like hill walking. I don't feel, there's something about being on top of a mountain or by a quiet beach where that thing is so much bigger than you, or any problems you have is inside that space there. And there's all that. And it just makes you, I call it the beautiful insignificance. You know, you're beautifully insignificant to the greater whatever it is.
I totally agree with that. We were speaking off air about what it's like living in Hong Kong, and you mentioned beaches, but like some of the best moments in my life have been in this time of Hong Kong. I had a beach where you're just looking at islands and you look at nothing. On the top of a hike, there's some amazing hikes here where you just look out and you're just like this is so vast, you know, like the harbour, and you see like it's literally where old meet new, these big skyscrapers right next to mountains, and you're just like, this is unbelievable. And I certainly can imagine something like skiing, there's an adrenaline component to it as well, where
big time.
Yeah. I mean, would you do any other reality TV shows not tempted by an SAS Who Dares Wins?
That's the one that I have like thought, I might, you know, I'd think about that. I'd probably think about The Jungle, although I'm not sure. The thing is, though, you know, I mean, being really candid, you know, certainly I did a Cirque du Celebrity. And not to say I didn't have a lovely time and stuff like that, but a massive factor at the time was a financial factor. I was like, I kind of did it for the money in a sense. I was like, I could do with that. Right now, I'm in a bit of trouble. So, you know, I didn't enter the entertainment business to be, you know, reality TV didn't exist, and I'm not a reality star. Like, it's not my thing. It's not my, and it's nothing against reality stars. It's just not my thing. So I want to, you know, I've come full circle, and I'm actually like learning. Lockdown, I started properly learning how to produce and kind of produce music and stuff like that. So I've sort of come back to sort of loving music again, and, you know, I love obviously going out and doing it live, and yeah, I'm just sort of on that journey now. And yeah, not saying I wouldn't do reality. There's nothing wrong with reality, but it's not at the top of my list at all. But sorry, I've got to stop you. I've got to run the loo.
I'll have a quick pause and we'll do some closing questions.
Okay.
So we're back after a little mini interlude, refreshed and ready to go again. But we were just talking about, obviously, before you went to Lou, getting that love back for music. So as much as I could generally talk to you all day, this has been a really, really interesting conversation. But what is next for Five?
Well, during lockdown and sort of in between when we opened up and stuff like that, we made an album. It was really like a kind of a gift to the fans because they've asked for it for so long. We hadn't released any music for 20 years, and it was like, okay, we've been given lemons, so let's make some lemonade. Let's just do something. We can't just sit around, in all this crazy uncertainty. So we did sort of remotely wrote an album and produced an album up, which we then, we just released independently. We didn't even go for a meeting with a record label. It was like, anyone that wants to here's some tunes, have fun with them.
Make a different experience doing it completely off your own back, especially if you're learning producing in lockdown as well.
Yeah, it's a very, very different, completely different experience. But I mean, it was fun to do it with the guys, and I mean, that was the thing as well, like, just meeting up, especially after, because it was like lockdown going on. Lockdown, I live on my own. I'd just come out of a relationship just before lockdown. So it was either I was completely on my own, or I was 50% of the time I had a 6-year-old child. So it was, at times that was quite tough. Like, it was quite, tough mentally. So it was just nice to get in with the lads and, record some vocals and just have a lad laugh and a bit of an adult conversation. And, so, it was a nice respite from that and stuff like that. But interestingly, just while we were having our break, having this conversation is because you were saying about that from the outside, you've obviously done a bit of research and you know me from years ago and stuff. And you were saying like about me going head first into things. And I've never thought about that, but you're absolutely right. I do, don't I? I go head first into things. I've done it with relationships, jobs, everything. I just go, right, boom, there we go. So it's interesting.
I'm gonna feel like I'm gonna become like the kazoo on your shoulder, like in the fence tennis.
Just be aware of that trait for future and maybe think about things a little bit more.
I don't know about your relationship history, but in professional history, it served you all right so far. So
so far so good. Yeah, true.
So you got the album, and then I'm assuming there's a tour. You mentioned being busy until Christmas now. So this
year is insane. It's insane. We are so busy. It's picking up now. The whole Omicron fear pre-Christmas made promoters and things like that and venues nervous. But and there's a 4-month lag. People don't understand that. These things need to be promoted and stuff. So as of sort of next week, it gets really busy. I'm in Denmark next weekend. I've got another show and all sorts. So there's a lot of Scandinavia, Europe, and the UK and Ireland, I think. So and Australia. We've got a tour in Australia, an arena tour in September, October. So it's going to be a crazy year. But you know what? Like I said, getting that love back for performing, and then it being taken away from you, it's good because it's sort of like that. It's like a coil, do you know what I mean? That's been sprung up. So now it's like, bang, let's go and just smash that and just go and enjoy it, and get that pleasure out of it. Because that's what it is now. When, I said like, the band was brilliant, but it was tough going. And there was a lot of other things. I went into music to perform, to go out, to play live. And, that's what we do now. We go out and we play live festivals and it's, we're doing it for the reasons that we got into it in the first place. So for all that sort of pain and stuff that it did cause, as well as the good things, I always say like it's the thing that is now giving back. It's giving back now. It's like the seed was planted all those years ago, but now it's giving back in a really beautiful way.
You find you appreciate it more because you went through that hard time. Like you appreciate the love, the initial love again.
100%, absolutely. Like we do it to get to earn money, but we do it for the love. We love doing what we do. We genuinely love it. You know, there's 3 of us now. There has been for years and years and years now. And
you're still glad you called the band name after the amount of people?
Yeah, that was probably, you know, the moral of the story is, if you're gonna, you know, don't call a band by the number of members, because eventually someone will leave. So you know, take that.
A household name. It's still a household.
Yeah. You know, if you called yourself 3, people would be like, "Who's that? Never heard of them." So you know, everyone knows what they're getting with 5. So yeah.
And Queen didn't do that and still have that same stigma when they had to replace Freddie Mercury. So it's not just the name.
No, I think it was because Freddie was such a big part as well, though. Bless him, you know.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, so I have to keep an eye out. Look at the tour schedule. If there's any that coincide with my time back in the UK for that 6 weeks, I'll grab a ticket.
When are you over?
I land June 23rd, and I am back on August 8th. I fly back on August 8th.
Okay, right. Yeah, I'm sure there's something in there.
Yeah, okay, I'll keep my eyes peeled. So, right. Just the closing thing. Looking back now, we've talked a lot about fame, and we've talked a lot about the lessons that you've learned through this period of time.
Yeah.
If you were going to go back and tell yourself one thing, like 16, 17-year-old Ritchie Neville, going into this now, you can be the arm on your shoulder. What would you have told you?
Don't worry as much as you are going to worry. Don't sweat the smaller stuff. Try and look at the bigger picture, and don't worry, you know, don't get yourself in any kind of like anxious states over stuff that just doesn't, in the grand scheme of things, doesn't really matter. You know, I would say, like, if you feel yourself in worrying about something, try and step back and ask yourself, in 3 months' time, is this going to be as big a deal? And if the answer is no, then just cut off that worry. And if the answer is yes, well, maybe that's something that you need to put some energy into and sort out. I think that would be my number one thing.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with that more. When I work with clients who are very stressed and got a lot on their plate, I always look at this drill of like, okay, write down everything that's stressing you out on a day-to-day basis, from my pen ran out of ink to my dog died and everything in between. And when you've got a list, put it into what you can control and what you can't. And sometimes just doing that makes you realize. But at least then, even if you're still stressed, you can go, right, what can I do for this? Let's put a plan. And for the stuff I can't control, how do I change my perception of it?
Yeah. And also, like, I guess something that I remember was everything felt so complicated, you know, to be so, you know, when it came to like management, record companies, and for that young mind that was me, it was so complicated. Everything seemed so complicated, and then people coming at you dead. It was like you couldn't breathe sometimes. And I remember, you know, some people might say it was the voice of God, other it was your subconscious, whatever it was. I remember distinctly, I was overthinking something, and I was looking out my window, and this voice, it was like a still voice, and it came out of nowhere, and it just went, remember the simple things. And I was like, remember the simple things. And I don't know, I pondered this one day. I went, I'm gonna go for a walk in the woods. I was like, remember the simple things. I was like, yeah, man, trees, air, the sky. Like, it's not actually that complicated. Stop overthinking, and, you know, just remember the simple things. And, you know, I think if you're having a really tough time, just simplify it as much. And do you know what? In anything, actually, even like production, simplify it. Always simplify it. I think we as a species have a tendency to overcomplicate things.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And working with clients trying to get in shape, it's the same thing. It's always a pack, and it's like, just like, what can you do every day to push you one step closer? You don't need to do everything at once, but we tend to want to. And it's advice that we should all take. We both started this episode talking about how over the top focused we get and how we try and do everything, but you know, it's always a work in progress. I mean, going into like, that's the advice you give yourself. Is it the same advice you give your daughter at 16, 17 years old?
Yeah, probably. I definitely, one of the things I'd say to her.
Mm.
I always say to her, you know what kids are like. They can moan about stuff and whatnot. And I always say, and I'll get her to repeat it back to me. I go, baby, we are not raising a princess. We are raising a warrior. Okay. I don't think it's right. I mean, that's not to say, she's got me around her little finger, to be fair to her. And I am a big softie with her, and I love her more than anything in this world. But I think there is a place for tough love sometimes. I think the people that really love you don't just tell you what you want to hear; they tell you what they think you might need to hear. Do you know what I mean? So yeah. So sometimes that's the case. I had a lovely moment. I mean, this obviously you're a personal trainer, so there's a lot of people that in sport and stuff. But she started tennis. I just thought it's a good base. She's 6-7 years old. Coordination, hand to eye, and stuff like that. And somebody actually said, one of the dads at the same class that she goes to, he said that these soccer academies for young, talented kids, they get them playing racket sports because it's the best for hand-to-eye coordination, which is something I didn't know. And she was tired one day. She came out, and to be honest with you, I'd been watching her, and I'd been thinking, how is she's been doing this months now? And in my, it's like she's still not getting it. Like she's really struggling with it. And she said to me in the car on the way home, she went, Dad, I don't know if I'm enjoying this anymore. I said, why, baby? She said, well, because I'm not. I don't feel like I'm progressing. I'm not getting anywhere, and I still can't hit the ball and stuff like that. And I said, okay. I said, look, fair enough. That's fine. You feel that way. You acknowledge that you feel that way. There's nothing wrong with feeling that way. Everybody feels like that about something, But when you're learning something, sometimes you have to break through a wall. A wall comes and you have to break through that wall, and you might not even think that you can, but all you have to do is turn up. I said, as your dad, this is the first time you've ever come to me and said, I'm not sure I want to, I'm not sure I'm enjoying it anymore. I said, so I'm going to say back to you, don't just give up now. Let's just keep going with it a few more months. And if you're still hating it, or it's getting worse, then all right, we'll look at something else. But just keep going, because I feel like you could have a breakthrough at some point. And then you're going to learn that if you turn up, and that's what the gift I'm trying to give you. And she did. And she's had a really big breakthrough in her tennis coach. She's really come on these past few weeks. And she's now buzzing about it, going, I said, baby, I think you could be really good at tennis. She's like, do you know what, Dad? I think you might be right. And I'm just so glad that I can't. And I kind of wish, my parents were super busy when I was growing up. They were running a pub and stuff like that. But, I want to be that parent that kind of, nothing against my parents. They did the best job they had, but they didn't have someone taking me to sports things and doing that kind of thing. And so I just want to give it that back. But, I think it's important that even as adults to remember that. Just keep turning up. Most of the wins that I've seen for people that do so well, take the jump, Donald McIntyre. He was one of the least talented skiers. I don't know whether you know, but he's an investigative journalist. So, I mean, that tells you the kind of mentality he's got. He joined one of the Chelsea football hooligan firms, and he proper lived that life. And he's got a Chelsea tattoo on his thing. We were in a sauna the one night. I said, a Chelsea fan. He went, he's an Irish guy. I said, no. He says, why have you got a tattoo? He went, it's a long story. I didn't know his history, but found that out. And we were both they all could ski better, but we both went quite far in the competition. And I always use him as an example of just sheer, keep turning up and don't give up. Because often the ones that are supposedly talented or whatever, they get injured, they fall by the wayside, they give up. And if you just keep turning up, you have that determination is everything. It's everything.
Yeah, it's that concept of luck, right? People think people are lucky to get a big break, but if you go back into your life, it's all the things you've done in the run up in those 17 years of acquiring, practicing, and getting good. That when that ad came up, you were there, you were ready, you were prepared.
Yeah, I guess
so.
That
mindset just is drilled in as you go through that process. That you become prepared, you get that mindset, you keep turning up, and eventually opportunity will come.
Yeah, absolutely. Same thing with production. You know, they say like, oh, well, you know, inspiration isn't always there, but, you know, you're not going to be given the gift of inspiration. Some days just turn up. You might come up with nothing and you might leave, but at least you turned up, because when the inspiration fairy eventually does come and bless you, if you're not in the studio, it's not going to come. You're not going to get it, you know. Just do it. Just be there and say I accept it when it comes.
So this has been an absolutely awesome conversation. You know, it overran a bit, and I'm glad it did. There's really loads of things to go into, and you have a great way of telling a very open and honest story, but in a very light-hearted, very easy way. So I think a lot of people take a lot from this. So thank you very, very much. So where can people find out about you, find out about Five, find out about the tour? Where can people have heard from me?
Obviously, we got socials, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We're sort of trying to work on that. What else? We've got a new album out, so obviously check out. It's the album's called 5 Time. I think you'd be, you know, pleasantly surprised. There's some, you know, it's kind of, anyway, go and have a listen to it, see what you think. And yeah, other than that, like, check out the socials and watch this space.
Mate, looking forward to see what the rest of the year brings to you. It seems like it's very, very exciting.
Awesome. Cheers, Si. Wicked, man.